Welcome to the NoScript show, where we are now pan-international, I guess the term is. How's it going, buddy?
I'm doing well, man. So you're pretty much now, from now on, I'm going to have to refer to you as our US correspondent, Odin Moja.
For a while. I suppose so,
Mm.
yeah, for a while.
Mm. Yeah, man. So give us, for the listeners, I already know, but for the listeners, some background in regards to where you are in the US and what your purpose there is.
Well, for the moment, I'm spending most of the festive season in the Empire State of New York, specifically Manhattan in New York City, because as many of you may not know, New York is both a state and a city, and the state capital of New York State is not New York City, but rather Albany, New York. So, yeah, there's that.
And how is New York so far, man? Pretty cold up there, right?
Yeah, it's not quite snowing yet, but it'll get there. But if I had to quote or my take on things now, is that the city is obviously a lot more different. I mean, I've spent many years here, many visits here over the years, and the city is definitely way different from before, which is to be expected. It's just, wow, the spirit is much different. It's much more dour, as they would say in ye old English, or drab and all that.
Right. So here's the thing in regards to you being our US correspondent. Will you be giving us some updates on US football culture as well?
Absolutely. Which is why I would like to point out that I want to send a shout out to one of my favorite football teams, the Florida State Seminoles, who absolutely demolished Duke yesterday. And I have a special dislike for Duke as a football team and as a college, just because they're just filled with so many douchers on their team. It's like if the biggest rich kid douche on your high school rugby team grew up and went to university, now fill that university up with guys just like him, and that's Duke University. So, there's that. So Florida State Seminoles absolutely demolished them yesterday. I mean, they've been having a pretty bad season, Florida State, but like the way they absolutely obliterated Duke yesterday it warmed my little heart.
How big is their stadium?
FSU?
Yes.
Yeah, actually, I wanted to hold on, Jamie, pull that up because I wanted to get the exact number. It used to be as much as 90,000, which is insane for a single school. Yeah. It is just insane. But stadium capacity. Okay. After some renovations and some things, its official stated capacity as per Wikipedia is 79,560 people. And it is
That's still mind-blowingly large
for one school. School.
This is not national level football. This is a university.
This is one university. It's one of the bigger universities, obviously, between Florida State, University of Miami, and University of Florida. Those are the three biggest universities in Florida. In fact, just to put it in perspective, with a stadium, it is the largest continuous brick structure in the United States.
Wow.
Doak Campbell Stadium. It is the second largest stadium in the Atlantic Coast Conference, in that specific conference, and the 18th largest stadium in the NCAA, which is the National College Athletics Association. It's the 18th largest stadium in the NCAA.
Wow, dude. But that's the thing, is if you look at that size, it raises the question with me: what is bigger, state football or university football, like interstate or inter-university?
Well, that's the thing, right? By the way, the football state, the largest, quick update. The largest one is apparently Michigan. I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure about that. Largest state. Oh no, wait, it is Michigan Stadium, Ann Arbor, Michigan, of the University of Michigan. You want to know its capacity?
Yeah, go for it, man.
Its current stated largest capacity is 107,601.
Jeez. That's 3 times the population of the town that I grew up in.
That is insane, dude.
Wow.
I mean, Michigan is one of the Big Five. It's one of the Big Ten football schools. But yeah, so I would say college sports, specifically football and basketball, are more exciting. They don't quite generate as much money as the NFL and as the NBA, but they're generally more loved. I mean, there's a reason why people go insane over March Madness in March, where they play college basketball, and there's a reason why they love like the Rose Bowl and all that. And I was chatting to a mate of mine, and I came to a realization is that at college football level, it's that whole malleability of youth, is that like you don't know what you can't achieve. And these kids are just pulling off all sorts of, also they're still like 18, 17 years old, but they're pulling off the most insane plays that I've ever seen in any way or form. And like the stakes are lower. Oh, you messed up this play in the warm up season. It's fine, but you're learning cool things to do. And so, whereas in national football, they're like, okay, you just have to stick to the established wisdom, the established doctrine, and that's what prevents the creativity. Whereas college football, it's wild, it's out there, it's just anything.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the great joys of watching sport is seeing, and you touched on it now, is that seeing a guy in the zone, like in his fucking element, where for example, in soccer or the other football, when you see a player,
the real football, not hand egg.
When you see
my American friends mad with that.
When you see a guy dribble past like 10 oaks and score a goal, I mean, and he was in the zone. I mean, exactly. You get a form of satisfaction from that, seeing someone performing at almost or at the top of their game.
Exactly. It's again, there's something satisfying. Also, just like these are human beings at like near the peak of what is physically possible for us as a species, and that is mind-boggling to witness.
I mean, that's why people watch the Olympics as well, for to a large degree, is the fact that you can see people. You see the closest thing you'll ever get to people competing to be the fastest human on the planet. Even though I do think there might be a lot of Usain Bolts out there that just didn't get the opportunity to get to that level.
Right.
If you look at, for example, the 100-meter sprint, it's pretty much, like I said, the closest thing you're going to get to a planetary competition for the fastest human.
Right. And it's I mean, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I've actually always wondered that. I'm like, how many humans had Usain Bolt sort of like potential, and like they just never had that potential developed? They were just sitting somewhere in some place, some
some backwater,
some place that just, or not even. Maybe they live in a fairly developed area of the world, but they were just so focused. Maybe there's somebody with Usain Bolt abilities who's actually, I don't know, an electrical engineer for some reason. We just don't know. Yeah. There's no objective way to prove that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that touches on that whole concept of what could have been, if you really think about it, in terms of it's not just having the knowledge and the potential or whatever you need, or the talent to achieve something. It's actually taking those steps or having those opportunities. I think there are a lot of brilliant writers, for example, out there that just didn't get the opportunity to get their book published. I think there are some excellent works of fiction that unfortunately have to be relegated to the corners of the internet, rather than getting like international exposure. But then again, with things like, for example, writing and intellectual works, the internet has given a lot of people that opportunity to be able to put their ideas and their stories and their content out there.
Yeah, I mean, I know he's something of a culturally weird figure, but if you think about Justin Bieber, right? He got to start. People forget he got to start off doing his little guitar sing song on YouTube, and then he got, he basically went viral, and this got picked up, and then Usher, aka Usher Raymond, aka the guy that every woman fantasized about in the 90s and early 2000s. He picked him up on his label, and he's like, okay, cool, I'm going to take this kid and I'm going to develop him into something special.
Absolutely. And I think we're seeing a lot of that in content creation when it comes to podcasts and political commentary as well. I mean, our podcast is an example of that, where if you just go back 20 years in the past, we wouldn't be having a platform. We wouldn't have a podcast. We would just be two guys having a chat on a stoop or somewhere over a braai, but we wouldn't be able to have a platform where we have an audience. And like we've said on previous episodes constantly on this show, it's about the quality, not the quantity. So we're not aiming to get like thousands of people tuning in. We just want a nice community of people giving feedback, leaving comments, people tuning in to contribute to the banter. Sharing the episodes is also very nice to see. And we have a very loyal fan base that's been built up. And I think that's all we ever wanted really with this show.
Yeah, I think I hate to use the word peaked out, because I mean, obviously I know over time more people will listen, but I really am grateful that, I saw some reviews, somebody, like I said a couple of times ago, just on certain review sites, I'll see people commenting on it. I'm like, some rando from Indiana or something will be like, man, I love listening to these guys. And I'm like, who are you? Who are you, Bob528? And how did you find us?
Yeah, man. And that's why I always tell you, use that rule of thumb, is always create an episode with the principle in mind that you don't know who's listening, because it might just be some influential folks. So always give your A game in regards to commentary. Don't half-ass it. But yeah, at the same time, we're not a professional podcast when it comes to having a script. This is literally called the NoScript show. And I think it gives people, I don't know if we've touched on this in a previous episode, but I think just podcasts in general, or podcasts specifically of this format, specifically also in a context where people are locked down in their homes, as was the case earlier this year in South Africa and is currently the case in many international countries, is the fact that they can, to a large extent, feel part of a conversation, even though they can't, unfortunately, not take part in the conversation. They can listen, and it's not like we're lecturing them or giving them an academic lecture, but rather we're just having an interesting conversation.
Yeah, I'd never, I would not want it to be prescriptive in any way or form. I was just as I always say, it's like, what was my phrase again? Yes, internet water cooler. That was my phrase.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, man, it's a tech show where we don't really talk about tech, but do you have any tech topics that came to mind this week that you thought we should discuss before we get into the more Christmassy theme of this episode?
Yeah, well, we still have to do the full-on Christmas special, which I'm trying to build hype for. First of all, thanks to everyone who joined in again for our previous special. Tech topics. Let's see. I was actually reading an article on software engineering, and I thought I might explain the concept of what we call in object-oriented programming Leaky abstractions. So this will make sense in a second. Okay.
Yeah, go for it, dude. The floor is yours.
Oh, thank you. This is Professor me presenting here. So in object-oriented programming, we have what we call the 4 pillars of object-oriented programming, right? And the four pillars of object-oriented programming are like the things that actually make object-oriented programming great, and they are abstraction, encapsulation, inheritance, and polymorphism. Okay, and for today we're going to focus only on abstraction, because abstraction's actually a really important thing that enables us in the modern world, and I'll explain the value of it to you in a second, to actually make software that we can maintain. And this, by the way, this is the part that you quote to everyone at the Bri, so you seem very, very technological, to write software that is maintainable while people are still using it all the time. So abstraction basically just means you hide the complex or irrelevant information away from whoever is accessing that object, be it some other piece of code or somebody else who's programming. So abstraction in this instance, one of my favorite thing, and I always use cars as examples for software engineering principles. Abstraction means when I get into my car, I interact with it through the interface, what we call the interface. And the interface in this instance of abstraction is the steering wheel, the foot pedals, and maybe the gear stick, right? That's how I interact with the car. I do not know or understand, well, some people do, but the vast majority of us don't really understand how the transmission on our car works, how the engine fully works, or any of that other stuff. All the stuff beneath the bonnet, we don't understand how it works. And the cool thing about abstraction is that you write software in such a way is the same way that whatever I use, whatever I call as a programmer or as a piece of code, whatever I call, I don't understand what's beneath that layer. So in theory, let's pull the South Park Underpants Gnomes example here. Some gnomes could come in the middle of the night and just completely change the functionality of my car, maybe for some improvements, make it more efficient, more powerful. And as long as they don't change the interface of that car, then I can keep using it regardless of the changes they make in the background, which means me and like an 80-year-old could both use the same piece of software or the same car without needing extra understanding or extra training to understand engine making. So you can understand how this is a cool thing, because that means, like, if I'm writing a website, I can change the background, the inner workings, the calculator of it. Let's say a quote making website, like, for legal reasons, let's call it watercow.com. It starts with a he and ends with a po.co.za. And I've actually worked on their systems, and let's call it lipo.com, lipo.co.za. And lipo.co.za has a quoting engine, and what we did is we rewrote the code in the background, but the output values were still the same, or the requirements were still the same. It's still foot pedals, gear, whatever. Now, a leaky abstraction is an abstraction where it fails to partially or completely hide the complication of what it's supposed to be hiding. So, for example, in a car, one could argue that if you over rev your car, the abstraction, the rev monitor going into the red is sort of a leaky abstraction, because you're not, especially in an automatic transmission car, even having a rev counter is almost irrelevant. It's a leaky abstraction. You're not supposed to know that complication of the rev counter, because it's supposed to do the gearing for you. It's supposed to figure that out on its own. So that is a piece of information that is irrelevant or complicating to you, the user. And that's what we mean by leaky abstractions. Basically, it's information or whatever that is relevant to you, the user.
That's very interesting. Do you know where's this type of concept most applicable?
Well, I would say it's most applicable when we write software, especially integration systems, where let's say if lipo.com decides to write a insurance quoting engine interface to some other company, let's say, for example, obviously no company we know for legal purposes But let's say that there's a company called Blientel Life, and they sell insurance, and they need extra insurance quotes. They would write an interface that would Lippo would write an interface that the Blientel Life people would would connect to. So why do you care as a layman or as a non-programmer? Well, the reason you care as a layman or non-programmer is, firstly, depending on how bad the leaky abstraction is, it could make it more expensive or more difficult to maintain that integration, which means bigger bugs for you as the end user. Or if it's a leaky abstraction that affects you, then suddenly it's going to be pretty annoying if one day they change something and you go to the website and it asks for information or for you to do something that you can no longer provide or do. That's pretty annoying, and it could be bad enough to stop you from using the website, and that's why you should care if your programmers write leaky abstractions.
All right, dude. Well, I hope all our listeners that have an interest in tech and computer science and all types of software found that very valuable. I've surely found it interesting. My tech topic nomination, seeing as we are still in the perpetual US election forever, if you will, is actually a question that I'll give my brief thoughts on, that I'd like to hear your thoughts on. And it's the idea of electronic voting. So it's something I had a conversation with one of my colleagues a while back, and the average person that thinks about electronic voting, where you go up to an electronic voting machine, you click a button, it votes for you. For many people, that sounds like a no-brainer. It's like, yeah, no long lines. That's going to be much easier, simpler, no more fraud in regards to ballot, like physical ballots, in the ways that you could do ballot fraud in that way. But once you start thinking about it, a lot of concerning things come to the fore. Well, firstly, with every year that goes by, the capability of international actors to be able to hack those types of systems or meddle with those types of electronic systems domestically becomes increased, and the potential becomes more great, and the risk becomes more great. And then secondly, there's the problem of servers going down. You have electronic failures. You saw that with the US election now, with servers going down at critical moments and then creating chaos. And then the third risk that I identified is that with the people having in mind this potential for hackers or any type of malicious actor from meddling in these types of systems, especially as that becomes more of a prominent feature in pop culture, the idea of hackers, I mean, that's already a very prominent feature in pop culture. Every election that is going to be done with electronic systems is going to be disputed, according to me, in regards to what I foresee. The loser is never going to be accepting that result if it was done with electronic systems, because they can always fall back on, but there was meddling, there was hackers, there was international actors meddling in our election, and their suspicions wouldn't be too far-fetched if you take into account how easy it is to hack these types of systems and to meddle in these types of systems. You as a computer scientist, what are your thoughts on electronic voting?
Okay. Great question. First of all, if I had like $1 for every time somebody asked me, hey, you're a programmer, why don't you hack this for me?
Hack my ex's Facebook for me.
Yeah, like every time somebody asked me that, I would have enough money so that I would get to delete Tinder. Like, people would be in my inbox, like people would be sliding in my DMs, okay, first and foremost. And secondly, I'm kidding, guys, not everybody's that money-centered. Secondly, the biggest thing is with a system like that, I'm not one of those people who says it's like we'll never ever do that. Like, we'll never like go full electronic. That's silly. That's like IBM level predictions. And by IBM level predictions, I'm referring to the famous quote by the I believe it was the CEO of IBM at the time, who said, there'll never be a market for more than like 5 or 10 home computers at a time. And boy, was that guy wrong.
And who was it? Who's that Nobel Prize winning economist that said the internet's only a fad, it's going to blow over. You can't see it becoming anything.
Yeah.
Shit, man. Let me see here. But anyway, continue your thought while I search this.
See, this is why we need to pay somebody to do this.
Yeah.
This is how you can tell, by the way, we're super professional. I wish we were like Joe Rogan and be like, Jamie, pull that up. And
Yeah.
okay, so my point on that is that, first of all, I'm never going to be one of those guys who's like, never, ever, ever. But I certainly believe that there is a lot to be ironed out there. And I do mean a lot.
Paul
think
Krugman, that's his name. Paul Krugman, the guy that said the internet would go the way of the fax machine.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, porn industry has something to say to you about that, bud.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, I've got a whole a thing to discuss with you about that. So my take on that, one of the most critical things in that whole equation is that we are going to need to create, first of all, far greater failover resistance in terms of servers going down and all that. And we're going to need to create far greater verification and validation systems as to see, like, in terms of tampering and flipping a bit here or whatever, as they say, which, by the way, makes me cringe so very much when people say, oh, they flipped a switch or whatever and it made all this happen. I'm like, no, it's not how data manipulation works. Okay. It's just every time somebody does that, it just makes me want to, like, I don't know, put my head in a meat grinder. It's so depressing for me. But anyway, enough of my cringe things. So in terms of verification and validation, things like a sort of a blockchain-esque distributed ledger system will be absolutely critical to that sort of situation where multiple nodes all verify this transaction, and that transaction is like traceable. Because if we can't guarantee that, then there's no point. Absolutely no point.
And how big of a risk is, for example, the hacking of these types of systems currently? Not in terms of what the future might hold, but currently with the types of technology that's out there. How secure are these types of electronic voting systems from hacking from malicious international actors or even international government actors?
Well, I don't know the full ins and outs of them, but from what I've seen, I would trust them like I trust Charlie Sheen in a room full of hookers and cocaine. Just saying. Sorry, gang. I just don't. So yeah, I don't know the full ins and outs, but that's especially because it's closed source software. So it's like, okay, so none of us can like know what to expect.
All right. Yeah, dude. For me, it's just I don't think we're there yet, and unless you can prove to the general public that these types of systems are ironclad, I think it's just going to create a lot of potential for people to be able to rightly or incorrectly claim that the election was hacked. I think we're not there yet where we're going to be able to ironclad make people trust this type of system. But then also at the same time, I'm also of the philosophy that if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So I'm not really a big supporter of the future is now and we need to progress to electronic voting as fast as possible because that's what the future is like. I'd rather have the system pretty much proven first before I would advocate any such type of advancement.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of like it's as much as my rivalry with the man persists, and it's going to hate me. It's going to make me hate myself to say this. Give me a second.
Compose yourself.
Musk is right. when he says that I would like to die on Mars, just not on impact. That is to say, I would love to go to Mars, just not on like the first 2 or 3 flights. Same concept here.
Yeah. But on that topic, Odin, do you think we will see a Mars landing in our lifetime?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
A manned Mars landing, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but that's gonna be something, man. Especially when it's live streamed. You're gonna have it's probably going to be one of the biggest events in human history in regards to exposure, in regards to the broadcasting of it.
Yeah, I mean, look, okay, so let me just quickly go to tech thing again. Okay, there are 2 reasons why. Well, there's a couple of reasons why space exploration, the sooner the better for humanity, right? So one of the things is it relieves the resource pressure on planet Earth. You hear these stories about like there's an asteroid with so much gold in it, it would completely crash our economy, you know, if we could mine all that gold. And that's true. There's a lot of this stuff out in space. Our economic systems,
diamonds on Titan.
Yeah, that sort of thing. Like and it's true. It's true. Those little quips are 100% true. So it's going to relieve, and it may one day affect our economic systems. In fact, especially when we get things like matter disassemblers, where we can just take this and rearrange the matter in this sort of thing, and it's going to affect, as we discussed on the show before, even our energy sector, because as it turns out, solar energy is way more effective just in low Earth orbit. Super effective. We can harvest it there. We can use it we can put one of our biggest, as I've said before, the dirtiest secrets of computing right now is that our server farms on planet Earth take up way too much energy to run, way too much energy to cool, and are way too much, and they create immense pollutants to produce all the parts. If first we move our manufacturing for stuff like that into space, second we power that stuff in space, and we just beam down whatever we need. Giant server farms in space. Hell, we can even, like I discussed before in a very early episode, we can create power satellites in space, as Isaac Arthur also suggested. The problem with creating power satellites, you collect the solar energy and then you microwave beam it down, is that there is no way to create a power satellite without also creating a death ray. Because the only difference between a power satellite and a death ray is me cranking the volume dial from 5 to 11. That's it. That's the only difference between a power satellite and a death ray.
Turning up your volume above this point might damage your hearing.
Yeah, turning above this point might turn X City into a crater of smoldering slag. That's the thing. So one of the reasons is it relieves resource pressure on Earth. And the other reason is that, well, overpopulation. We need to, although theoretically, I've seen models where, and again, because I'm such a fanboy of Isaac Arthur, he did the trillion people on planet Earth model, and it's theoretically possible. It's just not an Earth I would ever want to live on. And we'd have to be murderously efficient. Like, our concept of life would have to change immensely.
And there wouldn't be a countryside. Everything would just be hyper efficient urbanization.
Everything, every inch of land, and we'd have these giant well, I mean, there'd be some spaces here and there, but a lot of it would be giant tracts of land that are like these hive cities that stretch into the sky and then deep into the earth.
Well, you'd be taking the concept of the city-state to the next level, basically.
Oh yeah. So yeah, it really, and I had a conversation about this with a mate of mine. The whole concept. I'm sure you've heard of the behavioral sink theory.
No, I haven't.
It's this theory where basically, like, above a certain it's a popular experiment they did with rats. Above a certain population density, it seems mammals start to give up on life. They did
That's the rat paradise experiment or something like that.
Yeah. It's they coined it for the behavioral sink. For those of you who are listening who want to sound cool at your next braai, it's basically a theory where they took rats and they said, okay, we're going to give you food. What is it? They gave them food, water, everything they needed, and then
just left them.
They just left them. It was perfect paradise. But then above a certain population density, the rats stopped being able to. Not stop being able, but the miscarriage rate started going up, and like.
Or they just wouldn't. They just wouldn't have intercourse. They just stopped breeding.
Just stopped breeding. Some of them developed all sorts of disorders, and it's weird. And I was like, doesn't that just kind of sound like people in the big city versus people in the countryside? Like that population density. And it made me, like, as I mention, it made me wonder, are we not in some cities reaching population density, like that rat population density?
Well, it makes evolutionary sense, because if you have a very dense population, it's to your benefit to not want that population to increase in density due to disease risk and all the associated risks that come with it. I don't see humans really psychologically thriving in that type of environment. I think we'll lose our humanity along the way.
Exactly. So to that point, I'm just like, space exploration kind of helps with that in that regard, and that it's once we reach look, I'm going to be honest, I don't think we're near population density on planet Earth. I think we just love certain parts of the planet so much that we haven't. There are vast tracts of land. South Africa.
We haven't even started populating the ocean surface yet,
exactly.
Like the ocean floor yet, which is possible.
100% possible. Like South Africa alone, like there are vast tracts of unused. It's just that nobody wants to actually live there. Nobody wants to develop it. But realistically, if it came to spreading everyone out, the 7 billion sounds like a lot of people, but we could really produce.
I mean, you could technically fit the entire world's population into the province of Gauteng, I've read. If everyone stood shoulder to shoulder, everyone would be able to fit into Gauteng. Yeah.
That is insane.
So that just shows how small the human biomass really is in comparison to the entire world.
Exactly. The only, the only reason is because humanity likes things. We like comfort. We are creatures of pattern, and so we like this piece of land and this tract of land, and so we're just not going to move anywhere else. We're all going to be stuck in this tiny little cross section where a lot more of us could be living elsewhere.
Well, on the topic of Mars, in regards to that broadcast that's inevitable, I don't know anything of this, so maybe you can enlighten me and the audience. How long of a delay would there be between the Mars landing and what the people at home see?
Oh, geez, several minutes easily on our current technology. I think Jamie pull that up. Okay, before I Google it, let it be noted that I said several minutes. Let's see. What is the
that would be radio signals, right?
Yeah, radio signals. All communications between Mars and Earth goes through satellites because of the distance. There's a substantial delay as communication signals travel at the speed of light, blah, blah, blah. It takes between 3 and 22 minutes.
Gee, man, that's hectic.
22
minutes.
3 and 22 minutes, dude. Really, really wrap your head around that. Okay. Yeah. So at this point, we have been on this call for, let's say, a good half an hour or so.
Yeah.
If we had to use the minimum signal delay of 3 minutes per every single word we would say, this call would. So it's 3 minutes per. Let's be really generous and say each of us is talking at a minute at a minute a time.
Yes.
And then the other person talks for a minute, and then we have the minimum delay for each minute of ours. Then it is, let's say, 40 minutes, 100. So we would have been speaking for 3 hours just to get to where we are now.
And this is not even as if.
2 hours.
Yeah, to ask a layman question, this is not even as if we're in a scenario where the military has better, or NASA has better technology where they can increase or decrease the lag to a point where they would have a better transmission.
No, this is like
This is the laws of physics.
This is just the laws of physics. This is like you can't outpace this. Like this is the absolute limit of what we've got. It's not like landing on the moon where it's just us and our closest satellite. Like it's just a straight shot between us and our closest satellite. And between us is, I mean, there's radiation in space and dust and everything, but there's nothing really major there. You can pump a bunch of energy into your and you know exactly where the other person's landed, so you can pump a bunch of omnidirectional radio power into that and shoot straight to the moon. No, this isn't like that. Now you are shooting over a vastly increased distance, and then remember, you have to deal with radio signals with the inverse square rule. So remember, if you want to get a signal twice as far, you have to put 4 times as much power in. Right. And so on and so forth. So 4 times as far, 16 times as much power. Now imagine that over Mars, which is okay. So, and I'm not even a physicist. Mars, Earth, and let's assume it's at the minimum distance.
Well, Mars is 54.6 million kilometers away.
Exactly, 54.6. And Moon, Earth, minimum distance.
And that's the minimum.
That's the
minimum distance from Earth to Mars. However, that doesn't happen very often.
That's like once every, who knows. So the distance between Earth and the Moon is 364,104 kilometers. Which is still a lot.
It's a lot, but it's not 54.6 million kilometers.
That is like comparing my height to the Empire State Building. Yeah.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, dude, but now in the realm of theoretical solutions, is there any way that you could improve this type of delay in communication between like a planet like Mars and and Earth?
Yeah. Okay. So for starters, what you want to do is obviously you start off with the smallest launch window, and yeah. So what you want to do is, first of all, obviously you're going to land people on either side, but you might want to go with the slow but steady approach, whereby you build a network of craft that have highly elliptical orbits, and we can calculate this fairly easily. We can have a network of craft in the orbits of highly elliptical orbits of both Earth and Mars, that their elliptical orbits are so again elliptical that there is only a small lag between each one of those craft, and then then you broadcast from Earth to craft A, B, C, D until you get to Mars. So it's quicker to broadcast. I suppose you could create a bunch of broadcasts and halfway house stations type things between them, so that you don't need to boost your signal that much. Actually, you can just make it powerful enough to reach this station, and then make it powerful enough to reach the next station type thing. You'd still be subject to light lag, but again, the issue with the Mars Earth delay is that you're broadcasting it all the way to Mars straight, no stop, and you need to power that signal, as opposed to, I only need, let's say, 10 watts of power to get it to the station, and then the next station only needs 10 watts of power, and so yeah.
Yeah, no, that's when you take into account the distance, it really starts to put things in perspective in regards to how monumental this task really is. I mean, landing on Mars is not landing on the moon. It's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, it's honestly it's grade 1 math. It's like grade 1 1+1 math versus your final matric maths exam. The distance is that great. Like, it's worlds apart, bro.
Well, it'll be. I hope we see it in our lifetime. I think it will be one of the great feats. What's that quote from JFK? We don't do the hard things because they're easy, but because they are hard.
Yeah. I use that to hype my friends up when we're trying to chat up girls. Because they're hard. Anyway, speaking of which, it is impossible to beat anyone in New York City right now. Yes, it's an odd time. It is a very odd time. And I still have to go for my second Rona test on Tuesday or so. So it's a very odd time. I did do the PCR test and the antibody test. Both of them came up negative, which means I do not currently have it, nor have I previously had it, which I was kind of disappointed in. I really was hoping I'd previously had it because I was fairly sick, in March once, and then again 3 months ago. So I was like, crap, I didn't actually have it.
Yeah, dude, that's disappointing to hear. It's always nice to hear that you pretty much, let's say that I'm gonna say it like Trump did when he recovered. Am I immune? Maybe.
I would put it this way, right? And speaking of which, that brings me to my other thing is, I don't know if you saw there was Matric Rage this year.
Right.
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, Matric Rage is basically like our version of, I guess, spring break at the end of the year when you finish your last year of high school and you go down to the coast because it's summer for us then. And
and instead of STDs, they were all just catching the Rona this year.
Or both. How about both?
Gee, man.
Nothing says adulthood like waking up and it burns when you pee. So, yeah, a bunch of them caught the Rona. So my stance on them is this. It's the same stance that I had when all these university kids stateside were having these parties. I am less concerned about a bunch of 20 to 21-year-olds getting sick and catching this thing. In fact, even though I don't hope for their suffering, I kind of hope they do catch it and get over it. Keyword, and get over it, and develop immunity so we get closer to herd immunity. Because that's the population you want, especially to start getting this immunity. Those in the prime of their lives that are highly mobile, all that life before them. I'm less concerned about that. What I am concerned about was them coming home and then giving it to somebody who's particularly vulnerable, elderly, complications, all that jazz. So I don't know if you can hear, there's a fire truck in the background now.
Yeah, I can hear it.
Yeah, that's that. The reason you can hear that is because, well, first of all, it is fairly loud. Yeah, that's New York City. Yeah, I'm watching it go by right now. That's how you know we're professional on this. But also, the reason you can hear it is because of today's sponsor. Do you want to know why our voices sound so good? It's because we are professionals. No, it's not because we're professionals. It's because we use Samson microphones. Listen to that. You can still hear that truck going. I'm just going to wait for this for the next 10 seconds. Okay, he's done. Or not. This dude's ruining my ad spot. Thanks, jerk. Anyway, Samsung microphones are literally the best microphones I've ever used.
Well, you're using a Samsung microphone. I'm just using a random or anonymous microphone. I don't even know what it is.
Well, I've now got a Samsung microphone and a Samsung microphone stand. So if you want to sound as seductive as me, which is 0.5 Roman Cabernacks, which is the maximum seductiveness your voice can be, as I've been told by various females, then I recommend you go to our show.
This rich mahogany hickory smoke tone.
This tone. Go to our sponsor, Samsung microphones. Anyway, okay, so yeah, I was gonna say I'm less concerned about them getting this than I am concerned about them coming home to give it to somebody vulnerable. So at the end of the day, people are how could these kids do this? I'm have none of you been 21 before in your lives? Of course they were going to do this. They're 21. What you should have done, having been 21 yourself and knowing that they would still find a way to defy you, would have been offer them a deal. Say, go on spring break. Go on Matric Rage. Do what you want. Get wild. However, when you are done, you may not return to these areas. You have to quarantine here, we have to test you, and all that. That would have been a far better deal than just outright saying, no, none of this.
Well, Cyril Ramaphosa is going to be addressing the nation tomorrow. That's Monday, the 14th of December. So I'm holding thumbs that he doesn't go full authoritarian again. I still want to have Christmas with the family. I hope he doesn't shut down into provincial travel. But we'll see. For me, I don't think South Africans will be following the rules over December if it's too strict. I think they'll just give it the middle finger and do what they want to do anyway.
Yeah, that is one thing that unites South Africans, is a strong spirit of defiance. For whatever reason, but over here,
and that now serves as our segue into the Christmas segment of this Christmas special.
The Christmas session. Well, over here it's a bit of a lonelier Christmas because restaurants and there's a bunch of shutdowns looming. Well, for me right now it is 1:00 on a Sunday, so tomorrow they're shutting down a bunch of stores, indoor dining and all sorts of stuff.
So it's actually ramping up that side.
Yeah, which is unfortunate, seriously unfortunate. But yeah, I just I don't know what to say about that, other than I'm really sad that I wouldn't get to go to the Grizzly Pear. But we'll see what's still open and around. But no, we still need to have like the full-on mega Christmas special.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I do have one topic to discuss for the Christmas special, and I'm gonna say two things, right? Mm-hmm. Belle Delphine, OnlyFans.
What's the connection to Christmas, dude? I'm a bit disconnected.
So, those of you who are somewhat familiar with Belle Delphine, she is a how would we describe Belle Delphine?
Ethot.
Queen of the ethos. Oh wait, did you just back up? Your microphone's getting a little lower. She's like the queen of the ethos. She's like the queen of the simps. I don't know how else to. She's actually South African born girl raised in the UK, and she just shot to fame with her weird stuff that she was always doing on her anime-esque, those anime girls and their little, here's a shot of me, and in it you can see like up my skirt and all that. It's basically a thirst trap for, quite honestly, the saddest life forms on planet Earth, because just as a heads up, guys, porn is for free on the internet. But yeah, so she had an OnlyFans, and she's been famous for trolling people. She said she was going to make a Pornhub account, and on said account she didn't actually do anything, which technically she kept her word. She said she'd make an account. She didn't say she'd make any content, like any serious, hardcore content for it. So technically it's just simps fell for it. So now on her OnlyFans recently, she announced, hold on, let's see, on Jamie, pull that up. Let's see, 2020. Let's see, what is the original tweet? 2020, she says, at Bunny Delphine, 2020 isn't all bad. Watch this video. Belle Delphine, let's see, she announces on the 22nd of November. And then on the 24th of November, she said only 31 days left. She basically announced that on her OnlyFans. By the way, she was the girl that did the bathwater thing, and I don't know how sad you must be to buy the bathwater of a girl. And then she started selling condoms, and again, I will agree with Leafy on this one. Like even as a lazy poster myself, she's just God. She gets away with so little. I actually kind of respect it. But anyway, now she's announced she will be doing hardcore porn on her OnlyFans, and she's dropping the thing on, I believe, Christmas Eve or on Christmas Day. So there's that. Any comments on that, Bud?
From my side, I'm not really into that stuff, dude. Don't really follow it. Don't really have a strong opinion on it. People, when it comes to that, they can, if they want to give their money to, if they want to give their money to a fucking fool in his money are easily parted.
Yeah, I'm inclined to say the same. You know, I'm just like, I mean, even my brother is like more on that side of things. He's like, this is some peak capitalism degeneracy stuff. Like, this is just sad, bro. Why would you pay for this? And there will be people who will pay for this. I'm just like, why, dude? Why?
Well, I can say one thing. I think the whole OnlyFans phenomenon has really turned more Gen Z Zoomers off of the free market and its excesses than any type of bread tuber ever could.
Yeah, it's worse. It's done more than the, shall we call it, the yellow YouTube channel, as I like to call it. I mean, and the sad part is that there's actually a lot of good, like genuine good content on that thing, like people who use it for other things, and I kind of feel bad for them, you know, because they're like, the whole thing of it was to make a mechanism whereby you give control to the content creator. It's like cutting out the middleman. And I was like, hell yeah, you know, when I heard that initially, I was like, yeah, like I'm all for that, you know, let a man keep the sweat of his brow, so to speak, in biblical terms. So I was just like, but the way it's evolved, I'm just like, or the way it's gained fame for, I'm just like, okay, this is why we can't have nice things, internet.
Well, I think the final topic to discuss for today, before we say goodbye, is definitely the topic of the holiday season. I mean, you say we're going to have a proper Christmas special still, but before then, I think something that needs to be discussed is this time of year where a lot of people will be locked down and not be able to visit their families. I saw some dystopian suggestions of people saying, oh, and this is not outside of South Africa. There was the Georgia municipality in South Africa actually said, and this is a DA ward, say that you should consider tuning into your Christmas dinner and Christmas Day celebrations over your iPad, over the internet, rather than being there in person. And I'm like, well, if that is the cost you have to pay, then I don't want to live in that world. There's a sacredness about Christmas and about being there in the presence of friends and family and other people, not just sitting on a screen. So my big concern, but my big pity this season will be for the people that can't have a nice Christmas time, not just with their close family, but just with friends and family and people around them. People that will be relegated to their flats and to isolated spaces. I think that's a real tragedy.
Yeah, I mean, Christmas is exactly that. It's like friends and family together. Like, I'm here with family here, and it's like, you know, that old Christmas song, chestnuts roasting on an open fire. You know, they're doing that. They were roasting some candy nuts last night, and it was awesome. You know, that is the essence of Christmas. That one sense of that human connection, and to take that away is just what to say. And it's just, yeah, it's so dystopian. And I think that human beings are, most of us are smart enough to make our own, and I know that people have this nihilistic view of the world, but we're smart enough to make our own risk assessments. And so people who wish to participate in that sort of Christmas may, whereas people who say, you know, I for one, okay. No, first of all, nobody wants to kill grandma. Nobody wants to kill grandma, except for like I don't know, your gold digging, half cousin twice removed who she's like her failed modeling career has landed her with one too many cocaine habits. Outside of her, nobody wants to kill grandma. I for one would love to replace OnlyFans with OnlyGrands, where your grandma just cooks for you and like gives you knitting items and all that every month. Like that would be amazing, especially for the people without grandmas that do that. Like I would love to replace OnlyFans with something like that. So way more wholesome. So I for one, I'm kind of like, I think people can, take measures individually, get tested and, still spend time with those they choose to spend time with without going buck wild about it,
No, absolutely. I think that's an excellent message to end the show on. I think reasonableness really needs to prevail. And this is the time of year where morales are boosted. The time of year where you almost prepare, well, not only unwind from the previous year, but prepare for the next. I think people need to be granted that.
Yeah, I think so. I think that it, like right now is like the time we need to just recharge. I for one, I mean, this is the first time I am actually, like, my brain's been running on Go for so long. I have messages on my phone that I still need to catch up on from like 2 months ago and in my inbox and Twitter and stuff. This is the time of month where I think, I need my brain has stopped being on Go and I'm actually gaining some clarity. So if I haven't gotten back to you people, like, I promise I will. I'm sorry. Like, honestly, I am. Like, my brain has been on Go this whole time with grad school and everything. So
1 year, go.
So yeah, thanks, and I will catch up to you guys, and that's my sentiment. It's about the people around you and enjoy, and I'm enjoying my view here from this apartment, and enjoy, guys.
Stay safe, everyone, and I'll check you on the next episode. Me and Odin will be signing off, but the NoScript show will be continuing very soon. And we will be blessing your earwaves and your eardrums once again in the near future.